Guys, just back with another video. This one's actually about my TaoTao TBR7, and of course I'd say I've had it for about a month and a half now. Kind of got a couple things done on it. I actually had another item come in today as an upgrade. That's kind of what prompted me to make this video. Well, first off, of course, here's the bike. Looks good. Got a lot of the stuff together. Got myself a little phone mount to put on there. And of course, the bike does come with this gauge. The Hawk, which of course is like roughly the same bike as a TBR7, slight differences, one being of course the cluster. If you come over to my bike and you look at my cluster, of course it has a digital gauge and it has a tachometer. And I don't know where my keys went, but yeah, so this is from a Hawk. I bought it online. It was about 30 bucks. If I remember, I'll put a link in the description for it. I do recommend it. It's kind of nice. Of course, you do have to do some wiring, and when it comes to the wiring, I just went online and I was able to find the digital wire cluster, what it's supposed to be for, and it was kind of self-explanatory after that point. You do want to make sure, especially if you have a TBR7 that has a 19-inch front wheel. The Hawks come with a 21. You're gonna want to, I really need to find my keys. You're gonna want to change the size. Oh, they're right here. You're gonna want to change the size for your front tire. And how you do that is you insert the key, you hold it, and then of course hard to do with one hand, but you hold it and then turn the ignition. Oh, I hit the horn. But as you see, now it gives me the choices of what size tire. I don't know if you can tell, but you hold it, turn on the ignition, you can change the size of tire, change it to 19 if you have a TBR7. Of course, changing it to 19, that'll tell you miles per hour and everything, and that's what this is. Of course, here, if you look at the analog cluster, it has miles per hour. On the digital cluster, it actually has the tachometer, which that's the main reason why I wanted to get the digital. So I have a tach RPM readout instead of just a miles per hour, because the digital has a digital miles per hour. And it seems pretty accurate. It's about reads about 5 miles per hour higher than actual speed, but you know, it is what it is. Another upgrade I did, of course, is the carburetor, and the carburetor of course goes right here. I did buy one off of Amazon, not quite sure which one it was, but it did have the issue where the outlet is too small, so I kind of had to crunch the intake hose onto there. Other than that, it's pretty good. Main reason why I replaced this is because if you notice, there's no screw holes at the bottom of this one, and since there's no screw holes, there's no way to jet it unless you take out those screws, which would be a pain in the butt. So I just went ahead and bought a new one. It kind of works good. I think I need to jet it a little higher, or just figure out, I just gotta figure out the fueling a little better. I do plan on eventually maybe getting a wideband, just a lot of traffic, but getting a wideband just so I have a better, I guess, gauge on the air fuel ratios. Other than that, of course I did do sprocket changes. So with the TBR7 stock, I'm not quite sure what the right tooth count is. I think it's like a 48 and a 15, and that will get you about like 50 miles an hour comfortably in 4th gear. I wouldn't say comfortably, but you'd be sitting at about 6,000 RPM. And I don't know about y'all, but I don't really want to be chilling at 6,000 RPM going 50. So I went ahead and swapped out the front and back sprocket. I did start off with the front. I went to a 17, and course, if you walk over to the bike, that front sprocket is located underneath this. It has one screw up here, one screw kind of underneath like the shifter, and then it just pops off. You kind of like wedge it this way and out, and you'll get to that sprocket. I should go ahead and take this off. Let me grab some tools. I'll take it off just so you have an idea of what it looks like. Went ahead and got my tools out. Another truck passing. Went ahead and got my tools out. Like I said, it's this one up here. Just go ahead and take that out. Oh, I forgot all about this. Alright, so of course you can't have the shifter on to get to that bolt under there. And this, I guess this would be a good example on why you should buy yourself a pair of ratcheting wrenches. Ratcheting wrenches, of course, while working on a car, as you saw in my last video on my Audi, they do work wonders, because of course I can just sit here and go back and forth all day on this ratcheting wrench. Of course it's hard to do with one hand, but again, I do recommend some ratcheting wrenches. Yeah, they're a little pricey, but I promise you it's worth it. So went ahead, took out the bolt, got the shifter off. Alright, so that of course gives us access to the last little, oh, that one's on there tight. Alright, so that one's out, of course. I did ride the bike home from work, so it may be a little hot. Not quite sure yet. So of course, keep in mind I do have the slightly bigger sprocket, so it does fit a little tighter. But of course, this is what it looks like on the inside. You have two bolts. This little brass looking, gold looking piece actually pivots a little bit. I don't know if you can really tell. There's like little teeth and it holds it in place. You just unbolt these two bolts, twist it, pull it out, take off the sprocket, and then of course replace it with the bigger one. And then I rode around like that for a little while. It was nice, you know, get up about 55 at about 6,000 RPM in fourth gear. Of course, still wasn't really happy with it. Looked for all over for, I believe it was a 44 is what I wanted, but I could not find a 44 sprocket for the back, so I ended up going with a 42. And when it comes to the rear sprocket, it is very different. So of course you take off all the bolts and everything, and then you're left with just the wheel on the back. Just go ahead and undo the caliper from the rest of the thing. It'll save you a little time. If you look at these bolts actually do not hold the sprocket in place. You do still have to take them off. So you'll take off all four of those. I recommend loosening them while the bike is still together. I did not do that. It took forever because I had to figure out how to hold the tire still while turning this. So of course it doesn't work out too well. And then inside of here, you see around is one of those snap rings. So that's going to be the actual piece that fits in the groove in the bearing and holds this in place. This is, I guess, for like little more rigidity. But that being said, make sure you have a big enough snap ring tool to get that big snap ring off, because when it comes to the snap ring tool I bought, I think it's still up here on the table. Here's the old sprocket actually, and like here you can see the backside, and that's like where that stud kind of hooks onto, because it has a weird end on it. And then of course bolts, and then you can see where that snap ring interlays. But this is of course the stock sprocket. But here is my snap ring tool. See, I broke the tip on that one, but this one would not open wide enough to get it off, so I had to pry it with a screwdriver, a pick. It was just get the right size. Make sure you can get a big snap ring off, because if you don't, you're gonna be struggling. But yeah, of course that brings my sprocket upgrades. I'm gonna zip that back together, and then I'll get back with you. So of course, when it comes to the digital dash, you do have to rewire. Well, you have to run wires down to the plugs in here. And of course, I don't really want to take off all of the pieces, but you can kind of see there are the plugs that I pulled out of the actual plug, or the wires that I pulled out of the plug, and you just have to match up. So there's a wire coming out. When this piece is off, you see those wires come out, they go up in this loom. So you find those wires and you just literally match color for color, and then you'll run into two wires on opposite ends that don't match in color, but they're the only two left. You just don't mess with those. And then of course you'll have all your gear indications and all that will be on your digital cluster. The digital cluster actually came with instructions, so that should do you pretty well. Other than doing that, of course, I haven't put on the actual handguards. I'm not really a fan of the handguards, so I just have not put them on. And I recently did put on the front fender. I wasn't really a fan of it because it does this. It pinches on your rubber, and I'm not really a fan of that, so I gotta figure something out. Of course, when this bike is shipped to you, the only part that is assembled, I guess, is the forks are on, of course, so all the forks are on. But then when it comes to the chassis, exhaust of course is off, this is off, this is off, the whole brake assembly, the lever and all is off. Of course the fenders are off. The only thing on the bike is the seat. The handlebars are not even on. The handlebars are actually around the front of the bike. The tire was wrapped separately and put beside the bike. It did not have the skid guards on there, no kickstand. And most importantly, I did not notice this when I first got it. I went and I was very confused because the tire was just resting up there. I was so confused on what was going on. Why was it not level, lining up or anything? But this bolt right here is not in. So the first thing you want to do after getting it out of the cage, and funny enough, turn my cage into a shelf. So I'm not quite sure how the lighting in here is, but here is where the two front forks hooked on, and then in the middle right here is where it was like tied onto the back tire. And then this is essentially the whole entire box that it comes in. Of course it has cardboard around it and a weak board on the bottom that kind of holds everything in, but of course that's how the bike is shipped. After putting on all the panels and getting it going, I mean, I've kind of enjoyed it. It's been fun. Definitely had to make those upgrades. Like adding the sprocket changes and the new carburetor were a necessity. Probably the cluster, it's not necessarily something you have to do. I just highly recommend it. I mean, who would not want a digital over this? Because in my opinion, it's not that great looking. So of course, I live here in South Carolina. Getting the bike registered was, of course, something that I had to think about how to do. First off, I recommend going to a tax office. Here, we have to go to an auditor's office, have them make us a bill, and then go to the treasury to pay it. But essentially, you have to pay taxes to register it. The company I bought it from doesn't really charge you a sales tax. So when I got the bike, I went ahead, went to the tax office, paid that tax. It was like, I want to say it was like 80 something bucks. It wasn't that bad, because of course the bike only cost $1,609, like $1,609. That's tax and everything included, shipping, everything included, which is awesome. It was a bargain. Of course, so going to the DMV, of course, most people don't like the DMV. It's whatever. Going to register a bike, getting my permit also, because before this, I've never had any motorized bike. Always had bicycles. Parents didn't allow dirt bikes. Old enough to buy them myself now, so why not? Saw the TBR7, had to get it. So going to the DMV, of course, getting my permit, everything. The only issue there is they had a problem finding the VIN. I guess they were looking under motorcycles, filtered it wrong, whatever. Eventually they got that figured out. Got the bike registered, got a license plate, got it insured. My insurance was like $148 a month, or a year. I'm sorry, not a month. $148 a year. Hopped on that real quick. Now it's insured. I actually keep all those documents in a nice little place that is provided on the bike, which I kind of didn't get at first. Wanted to take off, but now I understand it. There is this little, let me pull all this stuff out. There is a little compartment that when you close it, it actually, doesn't lock because you can just twist it with your finger. But of course, it's nice to have a little compartment. What I keep in it is my registration, insurance, and all that information, because of course you want to make sure you have all that information on your bike. And then this is the toolkit that came with the bike. It's a sorry toolkit. I think I'm missing one piece, but it's just like a 10, a 8, 14, and a 12 screwdriver. But I just keep it with the bike, because you never know what you really need. And why not put these crappy tools in my bike just in case I need them. And of course, another thing you kind of want to do before you start riding this bike is checking the valve lash. And of course, please check every single bolt. There were a lot of bolts loose on this. Even my brake reservoir, this bolt right here was loose. The banjo bolt, so that was leaking everywhere. Of course, the forks were not tightened. They were on, just not tightened. The caliper was a little loose. Of course, always want to check all the bolts, everything. That was the main concern, was just making sure all the bolts were not loose. That's how I actually lost this piece. There's a guard that goes over top of this, and it actually fell off because the vibration. Because remember, not a counterbalanced engine, has no counterbalance, so it vibrates like hell. But those fell out. But partially my fault. That's kind of why this bolt got replaced. This bolt, I didn't tighten it all the way, ended up wiggling out. And I actually had the same thing happen to my rear brake riding through my yard, and I started noticing my rear brake is not working. Turns out, it's not gonna work because that bolt fell out, so I just put in my own little one. That's fine. Make sure that one's tight. Banjo bolts, brakes and your wheels are kind of the most important. If your gears or something goes wrong there, it's not that fun either. But rather not have your wheel fall off, and of course don't want your wheel falling off, and you don't want any issues with your brakes. But another item is check your valve lash. Just get yourself a little feeler tool. You take off this bolt, there's another one on the other side. You just kind of wiggle it out. The only thing you really have to do is remove this fender if you haven't put it on yet. Of course, you don't have to take it off, but you don't have to move the gas tank or anything. I promise you, you will just be able to get that and wiggle it out. You always remember you have this for a view for the top of the I don't honestly don't know what it is. Flywheel, I guess, whatever. It'll show you a T for top dead center. You can take out this, goes straight to the crank of the motor. You can twist it to get the top dead center. You have 2 access points, so you don't have to worry about taking out the spark plug or anything. At least that's what I did. It made no sense to me to take out everything just to check valve lash. Of course, you want to make sure top dead center. I don't remember the specs. Just look them up, Google. You'll find the best way. Another nice feature about this bike is it does have a lockable gas tank. It makes a difference because you don't want someone stealing your gas. It actually has like this little switch mechanism on the ignition, which I think is kind of neat. You just stick the key. You just stick the key on here facing downwards, twist it, and then you can get it in there. I guess I must have hit the turn signal button. Yeah, that's a good thing to bring it up. So turn signal, it beeps. Just gonna go ahead and warn you, if you buy one that's fairly new, they've basically like enclosed the whole entire computer thing with the beeper in it. So the only way to really open it is to cut it open. There's no like popping it open. And of course the issue with that is I don't want to make it not waterproof anymore. Don't feel like messing with it. I'll deal with the beep. It kind of does help keep me from leaving the turn signal on. Even though all I have to do is push it in to cancel it, I still forget to. But yeah, that's basically the gist of it. And of course, like I said at the beginning of this, there actually is an upgrade that came in that inspired me to make the whole video, which is kind of dumb. But I got myself